right? And with who you work. That's basically what new ways of working is. And the fact is that in the past, we're subject to a very hierarchical structures, I mean, what we call terrorism, where we obviously worked in closed departments, as mentioned over there. We were under a lot of control. People did not trust us what we did, right? That's what you can see there on the left. Oh, okay, let's go. As you can see here on the left-hand side here, the man here working in a factory, in a kind of factory. It's not really a factory. It's an office in the 50s, right? But that has evolved significantly into what modern work ought to become, right? It's really have the ability to work whenever we want, where we want, right? And in the different places, right? As well, it changes the way that we work, because right now we tend to work more on a project basis. We work more in a more flexible manner. We end to there's an intensive use of technology, obviously, and people end to become. I mean, they end up having much more autonomy. I mean, work-life balance is there, etc. So it's a completely different concept where we're going nowadays, right? In terms of new ways of working. So when we try to do projects around new ways of working, obviously we see it from three different angles. We work on the architecture and the spatial sides. We work on the processes and on the organizational aspects. We work on the technology, and all that's surrounded by the culture, right? So I mean, those are the type of projects that we do when we try to implement a new ways of working strategy on a big corporation, right? And obviously, at times when we try to make it happen is when big changes happen in our organization, as maybe a merger, or maybe some sort of relocation of a building, or change of one of the directors, etc. But obviously, today we are not here to talk about new ways of working or how to do a new ways of working project, but more the impact of social media on the new ways of working, right? So, therefore, firstly, I would like to talk briefly about the state of the internet. I mean, and for that purpose, sorry for having to move over here. I mean, there are some very interesting data. Let's see if happening here. I mean, this just gives you an idea of the number of emails that we send every day. And basically, for example, 1.9 billion emails. No, sorry, 1.9 people have email on the wall, right? It's amazing. The number of emails sent per day, 294 billion, right? 107 terabytes of emails, right? Every year. Just to give you an idea, okay, how many emails accounts do we have in the world? 2.9 billion. Right? But out of those 2.9 billion, only 25% are corporate accounts. So the rest is really people that have their own accounts. Number spam, 89%. Out of all these emails that I'm talking about, 89% is spam. And if we carry on some data, let me see it. Obviously, websites, a lot of them, and growing every day. Internet users. Okay, let's go in there. Internet users worldwide, 2 billion internet users. It's a very big amount. As you can see here, you can see them below, splitted by region. And as well, you can see the span generated by each of the region. More interesting to the topic today, social media. Number of Facebook applications installed every day, right? 20 million. I think it's an amazing number, right? Facebook users outside the US, 70%, right? New accounts of Twitter in 2010, 100 million. New accounts, for example, of Facebook, 600 million in total, but 250 million just in 2010. So it gives us an idea of some of the things that are happening out there, right? And obviously, you start asking the question here, with all these changes, how is this affecting our work? So we'll try to answer that later. So, how do we define social media? I got a definition from Wikipedia from two guys, Kaplan and Helian, and that's what they wrote about social media. Basically, I took it. Basically, they define social media as the group of internet-based applications that built on ideological and technological foundations of Web 2.0 that allow the creation and exchange of user-generated content, right? So that's what they understand under social media. So a lot of applications fall under this banner. The question is, on the current attention age that we are, because I mean, I think that we have gone beyond the knowledge age. Right now it's an attention age, and we need to pay attention on what we do, right? How should we use social media? Should we use it from a professionally? Should we use it from on a personal standpoint as an amateur? Should we use it on both sides? There's a lot of questions in the way that we should use social media, and particularly how you should use social media while you are at work, right? And so I always come back to this question, how we handle the topic while we are at work, right? The interesting point about social media, obviously, is that it breaks time and space and place, and it enables us and allows us to communicate with people that we were perhaps never able to communicate with, right? So that's an interesting, very interesting topic. I mean, here we have some stats, and the one that really springs to mind to me is that right now, American people are spending much more time on social networking sites and email. I think it was something that everyone may imagine, but that's a fact, right? 74% of internet users in May 2010, that's the data that I was able to find, visit a social media site. I think it's as well as an amazing, astounding number. According to Nielsen, they spend every month 6 hours and 30 minutes on average on social media, every single person. I mean, bear in mind, we are talking here about averages. So it's not what you do, it's what the whole population does. So there are huge numbers here, what we're talking about, right? And 80% of companies use LinkedIn, for example, as a primary tool to find people, right? And as a matter of fact, we're going to be talking about LinkedIn in a couple of weeks' time, as we're in a chat that we're given in this forum about how to brand yourself with LinkedIn, because I really think it's a very, very interesting tool for this purpose. This is what social media looks like, a mess, right? There's really a hell of a lot of applications that, well, I'm sure some of you may know a certain percentage of them. I can tell you, the vast majority of them have no clue what they do, what they are, etc. But out of interest, you start entering them, and a lot of them they are just amazing. So I try myself to categorize them a little bit. So for that purpose, firstly, what I do is, okay, let's do some sort of geographical classification, right? And obviously, which are the social networks most widely used on each of the countries? And it obviously, surprise, surprise, the one most widely used was Facebook, right? Facebook being the one in blue that you can see in the vast majority of the Western world is the most used social network. I mean, big exception, Brazil, or CUT is the most widely used social network over there, right? I think there's a Brazilian among us that may verify this data, right? As a matter of fact, I have very interesting data about Brazil, because you guys are the most advanced social media users in the world, right? And we'll see some percentage on that later on, right? But then as well, I mean, obviously you see other very important social networks, I mean, in Russia, or Qzone, for example, in China, or Mixi in Japan, etc. So it's not all Facebook, but close to that, right? Another way to see social media is based upon the types of social media. So for that purpose, this is what they call the conversation, right? The conversation is a snapshot of the different types of social media that you have based upon what they do, right? If they're social networks, obviously, well, you have it down here. Facebook is the one that really springs to mind. Niche networks, LinkedIn. If you think about specific to Twitter and blog communities and macromedia, you have Twitter there, and here are the different applications around Twitter to Twitter More, for example. Then you have obviously other ones as videos, as Vimeo, Hutu, etc. It's a very, very interesting picture. I mean, if you have the opportunity to see these, all these combined and what's out there in terms of social media. The same, you can see it here. I mean, this is a second stage. It goes more into detail. It even captures more social media applications. But in this case as well, it makes some sort of clustering based upon if you gather data from outside or if you provide data, right? So this is out there. And the big question is, how do we make any use of that, right, on the different companies, right? Is someone able to live with all these, with this mess out there? I mean, is someone able to hold up right, with these changes. And the matter of fact, right now we are living as a kind of second dot-com boom. I mean, in the year 2000, there was a bubble. There was a big dot-com bubble, and then it burst. And then it seems to be that right now it's coming back, because as you can see right now, we see amazing companies and amazing valuations given to some of the companies that work on social media. The value of Facebook, 50 billion. The value of Twitter, I think it was around 8 billion, and perhaps I'm wrong. Spotify, 1 billion. I mean, there's a huge amounts of money, the valuation right now given to some of these social media companies, and some of them have not really managed a way to start generating revenues. Not the case of Facebook, but some of them still they need to sort out what's going to be their business model going forward, right? So, these are the users. Obviously, we talked about applications. This is you, the different people that use the social media. And the question is, who is out there? Is it you? Or is it an avatar? Is it you as a brand? Or is it you as a person? And that's something that we really need to think about. That. I mean, do we brand ourselves constantly when we are out there in social media? Or are we really ourselves? Right? When we talk, or when we write, or when we make any comments, when we send any tweets, etc. And why are we out there? I mean, what do we really want to do? What's our behavior? Do we really just want to complain about things? Do we just want to produce something? Do we just want to get connected to people, to friends, or to other individuals? Do we just want to research and get more information? I mean, what do we use social media for, right? And for that purpose, trying to answer that, I brought you this other graph, right? And this is an interesting one because you can see on the left-hand side what people are really doing with social media, right? Whether you're a creator of web pages or blogs, etc., or you upload things, whether you are just a critic, you comment on blogs, or you do any sort of posts, you collect information, you are just a joiner, and you look what's happening out there in the different networks, and you're a spectator or just inactive. And it's very, very interesting to see that based upon the different ages that people have, right? My case, it happens to be I'm still a Generation X, right? So I look at myself and I say, well, do I identify myself? I mean, do I create? 90% of my peers create. Obviously, I mean, if I see myself at 41, then it's just 12%, right? And how many of us would be inactive? 54%, 42%. But if you compare, for example, this block, the Generation X, against Generation Y, right? It's amazing. I mean, the differences that they have. Look at this one, for example, joiners, 57 versus 29. Critics, 34, 25, 30 versus 19. This is really big. There are big differences. And the ones that are coming behind us, the youth, the young people, they're the social media generation, right? So we need to prepare ourselves to live and work in a completely different way as we are doing today, right? And this is just the beginning. On the other hand, you have a big question to ask yourself. I mean, what's going to happen with all those people that are the older boomers and seniors? I mean, they're more inactive, more than anything else. Are we going to exclude them from things because they are not so active on social media? So what type of services will we need to have for them, right? Some food for thought. I mean, perhaps some companies will find some business opportunities on that niche, right, in the market. And so that right now, we are going to talk briefly about some of the uses of social media and the ways that we work. Okay, there we are. Firstly, and the most common one, is that we use social media as a marketing tool, right? And I'm not going to talk about that. Marketing and sales and so on is not where we are here, because we want to focus that on the ways of working. But just to give you an idea, global Fortune 100 companies, I mean, 65% of them said that they were in Twitter, 54% said that they were on Facebook, for example. Interesting, to the topic I mentioned before, use of social media by country. I mean, up here you may not see it very clearly, but Brazil is with 80% the one country that's used more social media, right? In the US you have it here with 74%, right? 74% of internet users use social media. That's what it means. In Brazil, it's 80% of internet users, they use as well social media, right? We in Spain, we are 77%. We are up here, right? So, interesting as well, a Fortune 100 company in terms of social media activity as such. Some data, 27 tweets per week on average, 3.6 posts on Facebook, 7 blogs. So there's some data here, how some of the companies out there use social media, right? More from a sales standpoint and brand awareness more than anything else. So, and that is as well, it gets, we have this other picture drawing here. that really emphasize that point. I mean, the reasons because big companies use social media, 40.6% said because they want to get some sort of brand awareness, right? 7.3, they want to learn more about behavior, about your behavior, right? That's what they use it for, right? 15% wants to increase sales, leads, 11.8% to drive some sales. So there's some data how this why are they out there? I mean, why are they using social media, right? And in terms of how they measure their success, right, their return on investments, obviously 28.5% of the people say that they measure their success based upon sales and based upon the number of leads that they generate, 35.7%. But other ways to measure success out there in social media is based upon the number of friends and followers that they have, 65.5% of the companies said that, the site traffic that they generate, right, 59%. And obviously these two reasons, because these two metrics, they line up very nicely with this one around brand awareness, right? I mean, it makes sense to have those sort of metrics. So there's always a very big discussion, a very big challenge, I mean, that they have is social media. Why should we have it? What's the return on investment? Perhaps you are not to look at things straight and monetary and money, from a money standpoint. You have to look at things first, I mean, with all sorts of metrics that later on will generate some money going forward, right? Perhaps it's too soon to measure things only based upon financial measures, right? So here, I mean, a company built with social media, I have to say that, for example, a sales HR person, if, for example, they want to have some tools for networking, and to create new businesses and allocate new employees, what should they use? For example, in this case, solution may be LinkedIn or Facebook, right? The public relation individual may say, look, I want to know and respond to what the public is saying about our products and services. So some solutions may be comments on Dig, Reddit, etc., YouTube, and so on. Marketing people, they want to place content and build traffic to their sites. They have as well different sort of social media specific social media solutions for that purpose. And the senior level, the executive, he wants to be some sort of opinion leader. What will he use? He will probably use Twitter, right, as the best solution for him, right? So all this asks a lot of questions. What is all this fuss? What else do you want to tell us about social media? Well, I really want to talk about collaboration. I mean, in which way social media helps us to collaborate more and better, in which way it can encourage innovation as such, the use that we make out of it, some of the challenges that we face, and what's the future look like. So these are some of the uses that we make for social media in regards to work, right? Obviously, it encourages innovation and creativity. We will see some examples later on. It strengthens the collaboration among individuals. It allows you to expand your personal networks and locate skills of individuals that you did not have before. Those are the main drivers, but a part of it, there are a whole bunch of other reasons, as you can see on this graph. Fact is that the use of social media, we're just at the beginning, what use we can make out of it, and we are in a discovery process. We don't know all the answers at this stage, and fact is that every day, I don't want to say every day, but so often we discover new applications, new ways of using it to advance the productivity and to advance the satisfaction of employees. So in regards to strengthening collaboration, I just want to briefly talk of some examples, for example, with Cisco. I mean, Cisco, one of the things that they used is they have a very strong collaboration and social networking tools, right? And the company, obviously, as well, they sell some equipment around that. For example, this Cisco Telepresence System 3200, right? But I mean, this just gives you an example of social media applied with hardware, right? And it has obviously very, very good results, right? I mean, it increased productivity by 4.9%, at least that's what they quoted. They made some investments of around 90 million, and they achieved 691 million savings, right? I mean, by applying that on the corporation. Obviously, that's what they sell, but those are some facts, right? Other companies that as well use it to strengthen collaboration, maybe, for example, A-Space. A-Space is it's not really a company as such, but it's a very special agency made up of all the intelligent agencies of the world, or the most relevant intelligence agencies of the world, and what they use it for is, before, if you really wanted to get some some specific knowledge about something, right? For example, the different spies, they wanted to know particular information about whatever. It was very, very difficult to identify in the world the specific individual that had all the knowledge about it, right? And in which agency was he working? Is he working in a friendly agency? Is he not working in a friendly agency as such? I mean, right now, the intelligence services have set up a big collaborative network, right, where they really share a lot of information based upon this topic, and it's called A-Space. Very highly specialized, obviously. It's not like Facebook. They cannot invite you so easily to be there, but it's really a clear example of ways to strengthen collaboration through social media. And next, I would like to talk about encouraging innovation and creativity. And I mean, you all may have heard about different sort of competition that are happening on the different intranets and in the different application and platforms that various companies have. Example again springs to mind Facebook. I mean, they have some Cisco. They have a competition called iPrize, where they try to solve big world problems, right? So, and they say, look, imagine the next 1 billion business, right? And they put this, I mean, they have a competition around that. And I mean, the last time they did it in 2000, this data from 2009, in 2009 people participated, 104 countries, from 104 countries. As a matter of fact, I mean, a German-Russian team won the prize, and right now they're implementing that idea, right? I mean, they gave them the funding, and as well they're running precisely that business. This is people from outside Cisco. There are not people from Cisco that participated on that prize, right? Equally, this is internally Tata Services. I mean, something that they call Idea Max. I mean, 12,000 ideas submitted, right? They did in Tata Consulting Services, as I said. I mean, 10% of the revenue was linked to this idea, right? And then the last one I would like to mention is Innocentive. Innocentive is a web community that basically what they do is they outsource big research problems. I mean, the different people behind Innocentive is, for example, Lilly or is Procter & Gamble, right? Those are companies that made up the Innocentive platform. And what they do is big research problem that they have, they put it up there on the platform. They open it up for the public. It's an example as well of open innovation. They give a prize. I mean, they pay money for the different researchers that they say, look, I mean, solve this problem, we'll give you $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever. The different scientists in the world, they provide some inputs. At the end, they made a decision around that. There is always a winner. I mean, if someone is able to solve that problem, right? It's a platform, a new platform that's out there that gives you an idea about how can we encourage innovation and creativity. And frankly, I mean, this is really where the world is going in terms of open innovation, right? Innocentive, a clear example. Quirky is another one. Quirky, you do not need to be a scientist to be in Quirky. For example, I'm in Quirky. I mean, Quirky is basically a platform where they ask you things about, look, I want to design, there are people trying to design a certain pair of shoes or a shoe rack or you name it. I mean, an umbrella. And then they ask the different people about their opinion. And it's basically crowd. I mean, it's a crowd design. I mean, you have certain number of points, you vote for it, etc., etc. If at the end, that particular product that you voted for, it ends up being, it gets sold, right? Then you get as well some money back, right? I mean, for the advice that you gave for it, etc. Again, ways to encourage innovation, ways to really get information from you guys out there. And obviously, other ones is the expansion of networks, right? And these are the traditional networks that you may have. In the same manner as you have social networks as Facebook or LinkedIn, etc., there's a lot of companies that have set up their own in-house social networks, right? As maybe, for example, Foursquare and Microsoft, D Street in Deloitte, I mean, Smart Blue in IBM, etc. And this Facebook within the companies, they become very, very important to understand the companies better. As well, it helps a lot of the different people. And bear in mind, people are working every time more out of the office, right? Out of the office, where that is with clients or at home or at different places, right? So and somehow they really want to get the feeling that they're in the office, right? So a way to do that, right, is by encouraging them to have these. By having them participate in these sort of social networks, right? It's all the the coffee machine gossips is moved over to one of these platforms to a degree, right? Then as well, the other use that they made, obviously, is the expansion of, finding new skills out there, right? For example, KPMG have something that they have the so-called alumni network that they foster and nurture, and they keep on recruiting, again, people that were previously at KPMG, they bring them back because they go to the alumni network and they get information out there. And with that, the vast majority of the big consulting companies, they have that, right? JobVid, again, company as well, basically, this is a survey done by JobVid that just tells you what's the use of social media and recruiting. And basically, 90% of the companies usually plan to recruit via social networks in 2010, right? This is data, again, this is data for America. This is not data for Spain, right, or for Europe, right? This is American data. 92% use that, 86% use LinkedIn, 60% Facebook, right? So why do they use it? Well, they use it for three main reasons. Speed, very quickly. Within 2 days, you have a whole bunch of very, very suitable candidates, at least identified on the screen, right? The quality tends to be very good because as well there is, the thing is that if you end up lying on social media, at the beginning you can lie a little bit, but legs have very short legs. Lies have very short legs, right? In the sense that very, very easily they find out about you if you start lying, right? So it tends to be every time more. The quality is it's quite good, right? And theoretically, but I would say that still, it will become better, but it's becoming better every time. And the cost, obviously, no doubt about that. Time is money, right? So another use. The other one is improved productivity, right, at work. And some interesting data. For example, NetApp, it's a company, they have as well an application out there, internal application, where they share information. And the reason because they were sharing information on this platform was no other because they wanted to get rid of email. They were really fed up of email. They said, look, email, we get over 200, over 300 emails, every one of us. We want to have a platform where we share the important stuff. And guess what? We want to use as well haiku, poetry, for that purpose. I don't know how many of you may know what haiku poetry is, but it's basically take a thought, right, and be able to say the thoughts in 3 lines and just with 17 syllables, right? So it's a very condensed information. It has, 17 syllables, what's past 40 characters. Imagine how difficult it may be to express an idea in Twitter, right? Just with 140 characters, etc. This is just 40 characters. You should be able to express the idea, what you think is important, right? Using as well haiku poetry for that. It's quite fun, actually, right? So I was thinking of really implementing that on some of the business cases, business works that we're doing. Other use, if you say productivity, is productivity really enhanced? The studies tell us. There's a study done by the MIT in the US that people tend to be 7% more productive, right? By those that are highly connected and are very very high user of social media tend to be 7% more productive than people that are not, right? So that's just very interesting data. So that means that if you have a lot of connections, possibly it could be an indication that you may be a more productive person than others that have less connections, right? In certain type of social media. That could be an outcome out of it, right? The reality is that still face-to-face connections are more important than obviously social media connections. And the fact that people that were very nicely connected from a face-to-face perspective, they were 30% more productive, right? That is as well something. I just wanted to put this and give you that information as a balance. That is not about everything about social media. You still need to live as well on the real world, right? And then obviously. With social media on creative teams, really teams that need creativity to succeed, tend to be 40% more productive, right? By using social media for that purpose, right? So other uses at work, right? Obviously it allows us to. When we are doing a merger, right, from companies, right? When you're looking at a target. Right? You end up using social media a lot to understand more about the culture of the company. You go to the blogs, what people really say, right? In order to do a better due diligence, right? Another use that you may give it, right? you understand as well different company issues. I mean, even from your clients, what's happening with your clients, what's happening with your suppliers, etc. You can look at social media, you get to understand what's going on. Very important, right? As well, it allows you to discover new information, right? And obviously, the big thing here, right, is a part of giving you new information and allow you to be wherever you want, right? It gives you as well, in many cases, the ability to become more private with people, right? And what you do not have in other occasions, right? And the fact is that perhaps in an office environment or an academic environment, you do not tend to talk so much with different individuals, but social media gives you the opportunity to establish a more private interchange, a more private communication with some individuals, but maybe good, right? Maybe very good. And obviously, relationship can extend over time as well. There's another thing that is pretty relevant, right? You just do not need to be there at the right moment, and that's it. You just do not have one shot, one opportunity, right? You have that connection there. You really can come back and nurture that relation. More straightforward one, some other uses that we do in the world of working, right? It helps us for new hires and new student orientation, and sorry for the T, it's missing. It as well helps us a lot in terms of business continuity and disaster response. I mean, that's what companies use it for, but as well look at the use that they made of Twitter, for example, for the latest crisis. I mean, everything what's right now happening on the uprising of the Arab world. I mean, they are using social media a lot to really make things happen, right? And it's fascinating, right? I mean, if through social media, through Twitter, you are able to bring down a government, what will social media be able to do to our work or to so many other things in our life, right? So just one question that we have to ask ourselves, right? And for example, employee communications as well, funny enough, I mean, the IKEA, for example, the big announcement, right now they're making through Twitter instead of through email or through anything else, right? I mean, they're making through Twitter, and then they Twitter all the employees. All the employees, obviously, they must have some sort of Twitter account or whatever, and then to figure out what's happening, right? So they're making some different use of social media, right? They think that Twitter will be well, we will see some uses of Twitter later on. So, challenges. One of the big challenges that we have is the fact that right now, what do we do with social media? Do we limit that? Do we encourage that? What do people really do with it? Fact is that, I mean, this is a survey that was done by Robert Half Technology, right? They did it in the US, 1,400 CIOs, right? And basically 33% of them said that they are trying to make it, to restrict it, right? To restrict the use of social media, right? The thing that it's becoming too much, right? Too much. So 23% said that they wanted to limit that in respect to personal use, and 15% in terms of business use, right? But on the opposite side, there were 17% of CIOs that said, look, no, we need to be more lenient. We need to be more open. We need to allow it. We need to encourage that. It's something good for us, for the company. And so there are these different views. And guess what? 55% of the people said, no, not change. The funny thing, right, is out of these 1,400 companies, only 20% had some sort of policy in place. So it's something so new, but on the other hand, it's so big, it's impacting so much, but still it's not managed in any way. The companies, we are not able to give a response to how should we use social media. And that's, I think, it's to a degree, it's a risk. And we're going to see some of the effects of making a bad use of social media, right? Addiction. That's the other big challenge, right? Social media is really very, very addictive. I mean, just to give you some funny examples. Electronic messages. To a degree as well, it's very related as well to social media. I mean, basically, 11% of the people really interrupted, can be interrupted by an electronic message during sex. 11% of the people say, yeah, stop everything, right? I answer my electronic message, my email, my Twitter, my beeping up, etc., right? 49% of the people said the same for a meal, right? It was a different situation, right? 22% of the people were interrupted, allowed themselves to be interrupted on a meeting, right? I mean, I'm talking about younger population. Obviously, those percentages I mean, they really go up. I mean, if you are over 25, right? But I mean, just give you an idea what's out there, right? So, interesting. 44% of people check, update Facebook and or Twitter after going to bed. So they're doing it in the bed, but I don't know what time they do it. Perhaps they wake up in the middle of the night and they check the Twitter or the Facebook account. I mean, but that's what I said. 48% of the people. I mean, it's brutal. It's amazing, right? I mean, after going to bed. And then obviously there's another percentage of what they do before they wake up, right? So, I mean, it's just 61%. 61% of the people and the 25 have to check on Facebook at least once a day. Yep, there we are, right? So there are some percentages here that just incredible. I mean, how addictive this may become, right? And obviously this addiction, as well, you bring it to work, right? You bring it to work, and theoretically, I mean, you're supposed to be doing something while you work. And you may imagine if you work in an office, you may perhaps understand it, right? But perhaps if you work in other type of work, if you're a pilot, I mean, I hope that the pilot, well, perhaps I mean, a pilot is, well, if you're a bus driver, I hope the bus driver is not checking Facebook constantly while he's driving the bus. Perhaps he is. I mean, maybe the case, right? A train driver, or if you are in the middle of a production line, etc. But I mean, I'm talking averages here, but it's tremendously addictive, right? All this. So, what should we do with it? Another challenge is the abuse, right? 32% of the social media users were extremely, I mean, they regretted the fact that they posted something out there, right, in one of the social media. This is an example done by Kenneth Cole. Kenneth Cole is a designer in the US. And in the middle of the Egyptian crisis, he had this wonderful idea to write this tweet. Millions are in uproar in ## Cairo. Rumor is they heard our new spring collection is now available online at Tiki Tiki. Yeah, he wrote that, right? As well, if you really would think that tweet, I mean, perhaps you would think how not very sensitive from him, etc., etc. But the guy made a very big mistake. I mean, he incorporated in the middle of the tweet this # Cairo. And as you know, in Twitter, I mean, everything that you talk with a hash, that's the topic. And the whole revolution was really looking at information that was, I mean, all the information was channeled through the # Cairo tag, right? So suddenly, in the middle of those conversations where people were talking about life and death, what to do, what not to do, what's going to happen with Mubarak, what's not going to happen with Mubarak, a message like this comes out. What do you think it does for this brand, for this guy? I mean, I think it's a big cock-up, right? Obviously, then a couple of hours later, he sent this re-Egypt tweet. We weren't intending to make light of a serious situation. We understand the sensitivity of this historic moment, KC, etc. But it's out there. I mean, if you go to the tweets that this guy has done, he made already that mistake, right? David Bisbal as well made some comments, and there are all sorts of comments out there. And the dramatic thing is that those remain forever, right? I mean, it's always there. So we have to be very careful on what we write on those media. Other thing, how can we balance the media diet, right? How much is enough, right? I mean, you heard about how addictive it is. You heard about the problems that it could give you. So how much of that should you eat? Fact is, today, some stats is all Nielsen data is that social media just use 5.5 hours a month at work, right? On average. Again, we're talking averages. I think it's quite a lot, right? You may say, no, it's not so much, whatever. On average, quite a lot. 6 hours, 15 minutes in the US, right? Social media. So the vast majority of it is used at work. So the people do not use it at home. What does it mean, that data? I mean, something is, if you really go into the details of the data, right, probably you will see very different uses of social media. There must be very heavily users at work, and there are some people that not use it at work at all at work, but just use it at home, right? Globally, it's used 6 hours, so it's about the same as in the US, same use. 1 in 33 built their entire, not just a couple of things, their entire Facebook profile at work. I mean, that takes quite a lot. I mean, to do your entire Facebook profile. I mean, it's not just writing your name and that's it. I mean, those of you that may have a Facebook account, and you know what it really entails to do things properly, right? Well, not bad, right? So, how much is enough? Reality is that we are tending towards this. I mean, this is how much daily intake we have in terms of social media, right? Entertainment, 3.5 hours, right? And this, you can see podcast 1 hour, you can use of some sort of traditional YouTube 1 hour, news 2.5 hours, right? I mean, the traditional is 1.5, but then in terms of blogging, you have 1 hour over here, right? In terms of proper social networks, right? You have Facebook 1.25 hours a day, 3/4 of an hour on Twitter, right? And then at the end, 1 hour gaming, online gaming, right? Total, 9 hours. How many hours does a day have? 24 minus 9, 13. Okay, what do you do with the rest of the 13? I mean, you have as well a lot of other things to do, right? So, do you work at all? I mean, perhaps you do not work, right? So, I mean, that's what's coming, right? And this is what's coming towards us, right? And probably there's a whole bunch, some generation X, and forward, right? Super boomers and then the olders, etc., that really do not fall under this daily media intake, right? The diet, but well, the reality is that that's a fact. I just want to show you another thing in terms of digital distractions, right? I mean, how distracted we become by different type of things. And obviously, the most distracted thing is when, okay, let's go up here. When your partner, this is how your partner slaps the computer on you, right? I mean, they close your laptop, that's it. Very distractive. You cannot be using social media anymore, right? I mean, as well, they're taking away your phone, that's it, right? Device failure is the next level of distraction, obviously. If there's some sort of dark night, digital pain, I mean, everything breaks down as well, you can't work, right? But then it just gives you an idea, and what I want to mention to you is the huge amount of distractions that people have at work, right? It really gives you a question on what people do at work, right? iPhone is the next more destructive thing. I mean, everything is very, very influenced by everything what's happening to the iPhone. As a matter of fact, I mean, in 3 minutes' time, I'm competing against the launch of the new iPad. Right? I really appreciate that you guys are here listening to me instead of preparing yourself to listen and hear what Apple is going to say about the new iPad that will be launched in 3 minutes' time, right? iPad 2. But anyhow, next level of distraction is obviously email announcing redundancies. You get a text message. Sorry for that, I forgot the mobile phone call was on the previous level. I mean, so it's quite destructive, right? And you tend to answer that. Text messages, some sort of Twitter messages that were retweeted through Twitterati to you, right? Mobile phone call if you have it in vibrant and it happens. Email from a romantic partner is quite destructive as well. But then if you start going down the line, Skype call. So Skype call is less destructive, much less destructive. You do not pay any attention to that than the previous ones. Landline. I mean, look at that. Landline is down here. I mean, people hardly answer the landlines anymore, right? As well as it's a distraction on one hand, but as well there's less answers to landline. And you start asking the question, how many people use landlines nowadays? I mean, when you call a friend, you call it mobile or do you call it landline, right? Email, interpersonal, etc. And then it starts going down here to other things like Skype messages, emails from Twitter message, normal emails, etc., etc., and a huge amount of all sorts of distractions, right? And all that made up the hierarchy of digital distractions. A lot of things, right, that are happening and are passing through your desktop or your laptop every day. So, good. Away with those challenges. I mean, we talked a little bit about this productivity. But there was one study done as well, done in... Who did this? Facebook? I know it was a research note issued by Facebook, as a matter of fact, that came out through Facebook, right? And done by Nucleus Research, right? They basically were saying that if you forbid the access to Facebook during working hours, you will be able to enhance productivity by 1.5% at work, right? So this is what these people said, right? As well, there was another study done, said that if you restrict social media, you will be able to save, in Britain, 1.8 billion pounds, right? That's about, well, about $3 billion, right? So, is it good? Is it not good? I mean, previously I showed you some statistic that said that, look, those people that use social media are 7% more productive, right? So initially you want to encourage that. On the other hand, the company as a whole said, look, I mean, if you close it down, people are really going to do the work, right? What's the right statistic? Probably all goes back in the way you measure things, right? I mean, who's telling the truth? Probably there are different interests out there. I mean, I tend to think that probably both are right, to a degree, right? What you ought not to do is abuse, right? You should not abuse the social media, but you really should have them in your different organization. That's at least what we, from BACG, what we encourage and what we try to foster, right? Other things is control and ROI. ROI, we talk later on about ROI, the big topic. I mean, how can we measure it? And frankly, I mean, 80% of the people are not able to measure ROI on social media programs. But my answer to that is, look, you're probably measuring the wrong things. You're not to measure financials, you have to measure other things. I mean, number of friends, followers, brand awareness, etc., right? You have to take it from a different perspective. Do not think so much on money. Money will come later on, right? Another thing is the danger that you have in terms of renegade sites. I mean, it's a fact that there's blogs and sites could be created very easily, and people could make bad use of it, right? Could write whatever about your company out there, right? Risky behavior from employees. I mean, when you talk in social media about the company, if there is no policy, you heard that before, 20% of the companies only have some sort of policy in place, so people tend to write about their company, and perhaps they write things that they should not write, right? Because they have some sort of confidentiality agreements, etc. It's a risk out there, right? And then obviously, how bad it is for a company if they abandon the Twitter or Facebook accounts, what it says about the company. So if you are in it, you need to be there for real. Some final observations and thoughts, and I'm finishing. I mean, fact is that obviously social media is very young, very vibrant, amazing. It's by no means it's easy. I think it's very complicated, very complex, right? It looks very easy, but to manage all that is really, yeah, it's with a huge complexity, right? And there's a hell of a lot of things to do. I think that there is a lot to experiment on it, right? It's all about experimentation at this stage, right? And some advice there is, I mean, you need to plan it, right? Need for planning. Planning is very important. It's all about the user, and that's where you really need to focus all your attention. And you need to put people behind that, right? I mean, if you launch certain sorts of social media initiatives, you need to have the people behind that to really stir the pot, as I said over there, right? Some very big choices that each of us ought to make for 2011. For example, and this is something I took from a blog by Alexander Samuels, who's a professor at Harvard. I mean, what I'm choosing to do on the web. I mean, how many of us do we really think when we connect the computer and we enter the internet, what do we really want to do? I mean, in many cases we just put it on and then we jump into one news and another one, we put a Facebook, different things. I mean, do we have really a plan what we tend to do on the internet? I mean, I really started thinking myself, I mean, when I switch it on, I mean, what are my intentions? And in many cases, I just drift along. I mean, my wife tells me that she is an iPad widow, because I'm there with an iPad on the sofa playing with the iPad and so on, and she's there, hey, I'm the iPad widow or what? I mean, I'm here. I said, sorry, I just got distracted. I mean, because it's true. I mean, you get very easily distracted when you start ending one thing on YouTube and this video, this other thing, boom, boom, boom. 3 hours are gone. Oh, shit, I've not done anything, right? So, who am I choosing to be online? This is what I said to you guys before on the behaviors. Are you choosing to be a person? Are you choosing to be someone else, right? Are you trying to disguise yourself behind the social media? And you need to make that call. I mean, who do I really want to be out there, right? Is it going to be me, Carlos Lozano, or me, Carlos Lozano, the brand corporation, right? That goes back to this next one. I'm choosing to be a brand or a person online, right? Next one, what problems do I really want to fix? I mean, it gives us a great opportunity to work on different areas right now. I mean, if you're really interested on fighting against cancer, you can do it through social media. If you're really very interested on supporting a turtle, I mean, you can go to a turtle association and do everything for a turtle, right? Or if you are interested in traveling, I mean, what do you really want to do? Where do you really want to put your efforts, right? There's so much out there to choose from, right? So much to give, but as well so much to take, right? Let's give it some thought what we really want to do with all this, right? And then the last question I really want to ask you is, how am I choosing to use my boredom? When I get bored, normally, you're waiting on a queue. What do you tend to do? First, you get out your smartphone, start seeing a website, seeing something, emails, etc., etc., etc. Is that really what we always need to do? I mean, are we really spending time thinking? Are we really spending time perhaps talking with the person that's close to us, right? I mean, how many times you may have seen people having dinner, a couple having dinner, both of them with a smartphone and doing something on the phone, for that purpose. I mean, why are you having dinner at a restaurant, right? I mean, go somewhere else or have dinner, well, I don't know, with an avatar or whatever, right? I mean, you see it and you start asking yourself those questions. I mean, is it not too much? Right? And these are just some questions that I leave you for 2011, right? The use that you want to make. In terms of application, there's some evolution in terms of what's happening, right? And social media obviously is evolving and will be integrated much more in different applications, right? There will be applications that integrate all sorts of social information just in one from the different social media that you are in. Every time more, there's going to be social media, enterprise social media. There's the next one coming right now. Up until now, there have been a lot of consumer social media, but the next step is going to be enterprise social media as such. Search engine that will make use of all the information that you leave on the different social networks, right? Because they're going to give it away, right? Obviously, phones is the device that will be used more to access all these media. And sadly, or reality, but the fact is that augmented reality is we are using it every time more, and this entering our lives, right? And probably it will be more we will have it more in the next years. So at the end, run when you hear social media strategy. I mean, be afraid. I mean, people, probably the one person that's talking to you, we need to design a social media strategy, has no clue about it. I mean, my only advice is you need really to focus on your business objectives. That's the first thing that you ought to do. And then social media, if it's a way to get there, fine. And with that, I think that we are finished. So thank you very much for your time. And right now, if any of you have any question, I will be happy to answer it. So you don't need to give an applause right now. So yeah, please.
Have you studied the use of social media by the public sector, not only the companies, I mean, not politicians, but central banks or Ministry of Economics or something like that?
The question was if we have done any sort of research in regards of the use of social media, mainly focused on the public sector, as maybe the administration or universities, etc. I mean, out of that, we have done some studies in the use of social media for the universities, and I have to say that it's quite, it's barely used in the same manners, right, as in maybe in advanced companies, right? But that's just for universities, right, on those environments. I do not have a lot of data, right? I cannot give you any data in regards to the use of the government, right? Of institutions, but it's a fact. I mean, it's a very interesting point because this is as well a trend to use it every time more, right? And you see it out there that all the different autonomías, for example, here in Spain, and the different councils, they have the different accounts open, right? I mean, they have the Twitter accounts, they have the Facebook accounts, and they are trying to, as well, to manage traffic through that, right? So it's, I think it's becoming bigger every time more, but I do not have any data to support it, right? And obviously, as well, there's an interesting point. I mean, this is the whole initiative around the e-government. I mean, as such, that is very, very big in the US, and as well is right now as well moving towards Europe, right? I mean, Britain as well, right now with Cameron, has become very, very big in terms of e-government as such, and as well opening up all sort of, giving access to the persons about their data, information, how do they spend money, vote for that or not vote for that. I mean, that's, for example, something that's happening right now in Britain. So, but I cannot give you precise stats about it. Anyone else? So you are all social media users, big ones. Yeah? So good. Well, if that's the case, I will leave it. And I mean, I'm happy as well to respond to any sort of questions. I mean, if you send that an email to that email address over there, I mean, at info@bicg.com, right? You may get some answers from us. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the conference. Right? Thank you.